Would have come in at 10 o'clock, just thinking, normal time, but again, last thing was, oh, this is 10 o'clock.
Glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, so, well, why don't we call the meeting to order then? And doors, but doesn't really have anything to do with us.
Jim.
So we have really very little just to approve the agenda. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Have a second? It's a real complex agenda. Second. A motion agenda, all in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Opposed? Okay, then we go into our main item here, the budget workshop. So John and Rachel, I guess you guys are driving from here on.
All right, I'm just going to turn it over to Rachel. We're going to go through this. We'll answer any questions, give any explanations as we go through. This budget is based on the new funding user fee formula. User fee formula. We added those numbers in as part of this budget. Some other, well, one of the important things on this budget for user fees, our intention, if the board approves, is to use the new fee to get a baseline, and then we're going to reduce that, the user fee by 10% each of the next 3 years, and use our 1/10 of 1% sales tax fund to make up that difference, because we have enough money there and we wanted to be able to reduce user fees accordingly. So that's one of the key points to keep in mind as we go through this. So Rachel, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you guys online see the share screen with the budget?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just find that odd that you don't see it right there. But okay. So for the people in the room, I printed out what I posted online, but then I also printed out an Excel version that has more detail, because that's the version that I'm going to go through to explain where these PDF numbers came from. For the people who are online, the version that I printed for everybody in the room is the one that I'm projecting on the screen, just so you guys know what and where the numbers came from. So I'm going to go through line by line, explain everything. If you have questions, feel free to stop me. And I'm just going to go. So beginning fund balance is just what I project by the end of the year, what we're going to roll into 2024 with. I kept our reserve at 81,000. That was kind of set up to cushion us for any severance pays that may come out during the year. And then wireline, wireless, prepaid, VoIP, those are our excise taxes, not excess taxes. And they're based on historical averages. The only one that is coming in significantly lower than historical averages is prepaid. And so I based our prepaid, I did apply the historical average, but I applied it to what I project the ending balance of revenue will be for 2023.
What's prepaid?
They're like the prepaid phones,
Prepaid cell phone. like-
the tax for prepaid phones.
Okay, okay, I understand.
So that's where I got those, and the historical averages come from, I think I went back 5 years and got an average percentage and applied it. And that's all that those are. Ruth has joined us in the room. Then we get to the Washington State Military CPD. That's just our small grant that we get for professional development. And that number is based on part of fiscal year 24 and then part of fiscal year 25, just kind of what we project we may be requesting since we only know fiscal year 24's numbers. User fees. I highlighted these because the version that was sent out, they're slightly lower than what you see on this Excel spreadsheet. And you'll see that difference in the ending fund balance. So I think there was a hiccup between when I did this online and I did this on my computer for how these numbers kind of panned out. So I'm going to go back and review it because my ending fund balance in the packet that you guys received was at just roughly under 600,000. And the ending fund balance on this is just roughly over 600,000. And so I think that difference is applied to the user fees. So I need to go look at that to make sure that everything is accurate. However, these numbers are going to be very, very close to what we will be asking of the users for 2024. It does include the last quarter of 2023. Those numbers had to be rolled over into the first quarter of 2024 because we don't receive those revenues until January, February of 2024 because we're cash basis. So it's applied in here. And then there's 3 quarters of 2024. And this is based off of this user fee formula over here. So we plugged in all of our expenses, all of our revenues. We came out with users owing 1.9 million. And then we plugged, this is really in the way. Can I get rid of it? There we go. And then we plugged that into what we had decided on, which is calls for service, population, valuation. And then for fire, it was just valuation and calls for service. And then it was a 75-25 split like we talked about. So down here, I mapped it out so you could see these are the quarterly fee 2023. So that's kind of your first quarter that you're going to pay, or that will see revenues. And then this is the quarterly fee for 2024. I added them together and that got us to the 1.9. And then I took a 10% decrease on that.
Do we have that spreadsheet?
I don't think so, but I can send it to you.
Because part of our discussion was not quite understanding why AMR is back to the fire.
And they're not anymore. There's no, I mean, there is because they're revenue. So I included it as a revenue source, but it's not being credited to anybody like it was before.
Okay.
It's credited to the general fund.
Yeah.
So this probably, I need back up. I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Since it's
Let's back up.
sort of-
Okay.
Do we always have a special meeting for the budget?
No, in the last few years, we had a budget committee that met like once a month-ish.
But I mean, the whole board coming together to, I don't know if the intent is to adopt this today. but-
No, it's not.
Yeah, the intent is just to ensure that there are no questions, see if there's anything else we need to address. And in discussions with the sheriff, we'll be bringing it to the board on September 20th. For approval. Historically, we haven't met the dates in our bylaws for budget approval, and we should first try.
Okay, and I don't know if this is the appropriate forum to have a discussion about AMR. And Chief, I don't know how much we get into this, but they're indicating financial challenges and proposing certain things, which include contributions instead of being charged. And part of there are 4 groups that charge them. We do a franchise and then that's one of 4. So I can't control who charges them and how much, but I think it's getting to a point where we probably need to have those discussions because we rely on that service.
I would agree with that. In reviewing our current contract with AMR, it is financially substantially different than Progressive's. but I don't know if this is the form.
Well, I mean, there's part of this budget and charging, and then they have that admin fee, which, while we're on the subject, AMR. So I know they're adding a 4.5 COLA adjustment. It's something we've been doing with that admin fee on AMR. I keep asking, how do we establish that fee to begin with? And at some point, you need to review after a certain amount, in my opinion, a certain amount of years to justify why we're charging them this admin fee every single time. That we call. Instead of just slap it on, an adjusted factor. But my main concern is what's going on with AMR, financially speaking, and they're a big part of the revenue. And I would assume if decisions are made otherwise, that the other user fees are like, just depending on the scenario.
I think that memory serves, that original fee was based on a dollar amount per call. I don't know if it's evolved from there or not.
There is a fee that we do charge them per call.
Mhm.
It's independent of the admin.
Okay,
And I'm not really sure what that's about either. But whatever it's
Yeah.
about, I don't,
I'm not
it's not
sure.
been evaluated for probably several years.
Right now, the contract has a stipulated step increase. What that fee is.
Mhm.
However, there were 4 years where it didn't increase at all. And in comparing our agreement with them with Crescent, as I said, there's a substantial difference. What Crescent's charging per call. versus what the call for the same service.
For just the admin or
No,
in total?
call for each call.
it's originally, I don't think they were paying anything years ago. And, there was an effort to get them to help share the load, because they were using 911 resources. And that's how that contract originally developed. I know it's evolved quite a bit over the years.
I would appreciate having a conversation with regarding that. I'm not sure the nature of your contract with them. So if we increase what we're charging them, there's just going to pass that increase on your contract. I'm not sure how that
No, they pay us
would be.
to franchise.
Charge Cressa, is Cressa charging more or less? Much. Yeah. We are, the numbers are fine. We are at
Roughly, yeah.
$18.50 per call. Cressa for 2023 was at $20.
Do they have the administrative fee as well?
I don't know that. I didn't see that in Cressa's contract.
Because they have a user fee and this admin fee, but all I have to say, they're charged by 4 different groups in this county. I can't control 3 of them. And this is 911 dispatch, EMS council. Oh, and then fire 2.
That's on a per call-
Backfill.
per call basis, yeah.
That's a pass through with, we have to call counts to.
I would like to sit down and understand.
Yeah, we're working with them right now.
Probably more compared to everything else.
We're requesting financials, but it's probably, it's
Yeah.
imperative that we have an ambulance service.
But, yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know where this is gonna go, but they're indicating the financial challenges. And in a way requesting that these 4 groups that charge them not do that in addition to the. So as we consider the budget, and I don't know what this is, I'm saying, you get a pretty, a revenue source from that, and my guess
Right.
is
Yeah,
when if something happens, they're out of the picture, I'm not saying they are, you just absorb that with your fund balance. Or.
Yeah.
The users are paying more.
Yeah,
These are the- Comes, you know, it's the call that the jurisdiction it comes from. Then absorb that. Or, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume we're not gonna charge the users a significant amount more. We'll probably do something with sales tax to try to absorb a little bit of
Yeah, because
that.
I think at the point we're not, I don't think we're gonna know any answers even before the end of the year. maybe,
Sure.
But we're gonna have this adopted, I'm sure. And people are gonna put that in their budget and make an assumption. That's gonna be our fee.
Yes,
yeah, and if something changes with AMR and that amount is reduced, the amount of revenue will be different. We can absorb sales tax and not impact. budget.
yeah, I don't imagine once the user fees are set for the budget, we're not gonna mess with those. So we'll figure out a different source to cover those changes. Okay, did anybody online have any questions before I move on? Go back to this.
Right now, it's still.
I hear somebody talking.
Hey, this is Andrew.
Okay.
So Marissa put it in the text, but we're having trouble hearing John or anybody in the room. Just FYI.
Okay, so they were discussing AMR and the contracts the 4 contracts that they have in the county with different users. Us, EMS Council, Cowlitz 2, and what's the other one? What are the 4?
City of Longview.
And City of
EMS
Longview.
Council, Fire 2.
And they were concerned or brought up a concern of AMR having some possible financial issues and what it would look like if AMR just decided to pull out altogether, and how that would affect the users and their user fees for 2024. And we intend that if that were to happen, the user fees would be set for 2024, and so we would absorb it either with sales tax or with. Good.
Thank you.
Guys, yeah, do you guys have any questions on that?
No questions. I just wanted to let you know we were having a large problem hearing.
Okay,
We'll try to speak up a little bit, Andy.
so we are down in interest, local sales tax, and miscellaneous revenue. Interest earned is just kind of based on what it is now and what I kind of project it to be for next year. I think maybe with a little bit of a decrease. And then that local sales tax is just kind of historical averages as well. And then transfer in is coming at 1.795. It is used to fund our radio ops and our radio replacements. And this was built out with the revenues that we knew we would have prior to user fees. And then we applied 1.58 million as the transfer in from sales tax to figure out what the user fee amount would be, reduce that by 10%, and then increase the transfer in from sales tax to make up that difference. So the user fees that you guys see on yours, on the PDF version, is slightly different than the one here, which is at 1.77. So I am going to double check and review those to make sure you guys have solid numbers for your next meeting. However, they're within $1,000 up or down.
So for those of you that collect sales taxes, is that still coming in strong? Or, I mean, just,
It is. People
It
are
is.
still
Right now it
spending
is.
money.
It
Okay.
is.
That's the other thing. I didn't check this last month, but
I've only seen increases so far.
eventually that's not gonna,
Yeah,
it's not gonna stay.
yeah, and I didn't use 2024 with an increase. I did actually slightly decrease it because I don't know what's gonna happen in 2024.
you don't
We
have
may
that
have it,
crystal ball.
yeah, so it may be substantial. I think decreased by, I want to say 2%, because I'm not sure. I don't know. We went through COVID. It's a pretty new funding source for us, so I'm not sure
It is.
what's
It
gonna
just,
happen.
You know, with the ups and downs on the economy and things, it's just kind of a wild card, I guess, but
Right.
it's nice to hear that it's staying at least stable.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions before I move into our expenditure portion? Okay. So first line is facility manager work clothing. We covered that one-time expense. However, we do want it built into his salary so that he can purchase pants, boots, shirts if he needs to, because he gets them pretty roughed up doing what he does for his job. But it is a taxable, like payroll taxable item. So that is built into his salary.
So.
Okay. So this very first line where it says facility manager work clothing, it won't be an expenditure. There's no expense out of that line. It's actually built into salaries and wages because it would be a salary and
Is
wages.
that something we need to keep in the budget as far as a line item here then?
It does not. It was just a 2023 line item that I had to add. And because it's comparing budget to budget, it wasn't a budgeted item, but we did expend money from it.
So you're budgeting a clothing allowance now, is that what you're saying?
We're not
So-
budgeting, we're adding it to a salary, so it comes under salaries.
Yeah, so this line item that you see, it's there because we didn't budget it for 2023, but we purchased some clothing for him in 2023. And this is comparing budget to budget, so it looks like 0 to 0. But it won't let me take it out. I pulled it from my financial system. I can't pull it out because we actually did pay something out of that line. But for 2024, it's not an expenditure. It will be part of salaries and wages because we have to do payroll taxes on
Yeah.
that.
I get that.
Okay.
Reimbursement, right? But if he, I guess, why would you inflate his salary and not put it in a salary category of clothing allowance? Which is appropriate because it gets taxed as well.
That's
Yeah,
exactly. how it would be.
that's what I
It'll be
did,
clothing
yeah.
allowance on his pay stub.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to explain the empty line there.
And by the way,
Why we
that-
have an empty line.
That amount will be $600 a year, $25 per paycheck.
Okay, because what you sent out has 0 even for 2024.
Yeah, because that's the budgeted number. So we didn't budget anything for clothing, but we did spend something for clothing. And so this is only showing you budget to budget.
Okay.
And then Washington State Auditor, 2023, they didn't come, but they are going to pay us a visit next year. So we budgeted 24,000.
Well, so is this, I have a question about this.
Yeah, yeah.
You have it in the account 10 category, which signifies salary. Right? So it's in this salaries. which-
For the auditor,
Yes,
yes.
they're not a salary. We don't pay them a salary. You actually, that's an expenditure category.
Okay, I will
Right.
move it. I can move it.
So, and because of that, when I saw that up there, your calculations would change for medical, obviously, social security and retirement, because you're not gonna pay 765.
It
on
is not,
that.
so, sorry, it is not a salary category. For whatever reason, the way that the financial system printed this out, it's actually down in 40s. It's in the 40 category, which is expenditures. I don't know why it's printing up in the 10s, but it's actually a 40. So it's not applied to salaries and wages, and in the build out, it doesn't add that state auditor cost to salaries and wages.
Rachel?
Yeah.
Just so I understand a little about what we're looking at. I'm following the one you handed out.
Yep.
today. We have monthly wages. From positions, and it says annual cost, but those look like 6 months.
Yeah, so
What,
it's,
why is that?
so depending on what step they're gonna be at for how long they're gonna be at that step, that's how this is broken out. So if they're gonna be at step 3 for 7 months, then I figure out what step 3 is for 7 months And then there's another line that would be set for the 5 other months that they have it. So,
So for example.
so it
Chief,
probably
you're
is
on-
6 months.
You're on page 2
Yeah.
of the Excel sheet and line items 53 and 54.
Yeah.
Those are both for the facility manager. The first is at 1 pay rate until there's
Oh, I
an
see now.
increase and
Once
then the
once
second
it's
pay rate.
step,
Yeah,
it's, in line C, it
So-
says 6.
yeah, that's why it looks reduced because
But
there's
the
2
annual
different
cost,
steps.
yeah, just. I'm following.
So I hear what you're saying about 40, but it's still the 10. It is being taxed. I just did the quick math again. So when I do a 7.65 employer contribution for FICA or OASDI,
Uh-huh.
it's including that 24,000,
Okay.
right? Because every category up there is taxable, as well as the severance when it comes to social security. Minus severance for retirement. So last
Right.
night, as I saw that, and just doing a quick math, it's taxing it because it's still a 10. That makes sense in the whole chart accounts.
Which line,
Washington State Auditor. That's an expenditure. It's not a pay, it's not a salary. And so if you look down with medical, social security, retirement, it's getting included in those taxable liabilities.
Okay, I
At
will
least my
double,
calculation.
I will double check those two, because facility manager for some reason is showing up in there, it's a 30, and the Washington State Auditor is a 40, so it should be down in the 40s and 30s.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's showing up there.
It's the 10 before it, right?
No, because everything's a 10 before it. They're all 10s.
Right, but it's,
It's a 528 10, and then whatever the object code is. So those are 30s, 40s, 10s, 20s. Those are,
but I think it should be down in the operating expenditures, right?
yeah, because it's a 30 and 40.
Well, because it's not a taxable payroll item.
Right, so I guess what I was saying is the 52810, that's uniform across the board. So that 40, it is coded correctly, it's just not showing in the 40s. So yeah, it must be something in the back end. I have it attached somewhere wrong. So I'll move it to the correct category.
Unless you want to hire the Washington State auditors as one of your employees, but
Maybe,
it would be independent.
okay.
Does anybody do that? I don't.
So I'll double check those too. However, when I did plug this in, the state auditor is not up here in my salaries and wages, and I did apply it to only what showed up in salaries and wages and holiday pay, etc. So I feel like it should be pretty accurate, but I'll go double check the numbers and make sure that when I print this off, they show in the correct categories. Salaries and wages went up. And we applied a 3.5 COLA based on the June to June COLA CPI. Holidays
You know,
went,
Can I make a
Yeah.
note there on salaries and wages? In the 23 budget, we were budgeted for 23 dispatchers and 3 in training positions for a total of 26. We are keeping that total number at 26, however, it'll be 24 dispatchers and 2 training positions, and 4 of those positions being working for supervisors.
Was the COLA, was that already bargained?
I don't know if you guys can hear John or not. If you want to put it in the chat, let me know. But he was just explaining that in 2023, we had 23 dispatchers and 3 in training. For 2024, we kept it at 26. However, we did 24 dispatchers and 2 in training. So it's still the same amount of dispatchers. For holidays, we did add Juneteenth. And overtime is increased, but that's just due to COLA increases. Training pay, we kept the same. And then call pay, we kept the same. And call pay is just if somebody calls and we have to call out because somebody called in sick, we pay them $5. Dispatcher in charge, I increased it based on kind of how 2023 is coming in.
It's a 227% increase, is that?
It
the
probably
trend?
is because it's a brand new pay item. And we didn't start it until a few months in, so I didn't know what it was gonna be. I was giving it a rough guesstimate. So that's kind of where I think it's gonna land, and I think this year will be a good tell of what that actually will be moving forward. Although with having 4 new supervisors, we may not have a lot of dispatcher in charge. So, and then medical insurance, I based it on $17.50 a month for 32 employees. But we do have some language that newer employees don't get that full $17.50. But I did it based on just the overall amount.
So the information there is previously as contracted, if an employee did not take advantage of our insurance, we gave them that $17.50 a month that we would have paid for insurance.
Would you like to leave it?
Yeah,
into Aviva,
The whole thing?
the whole thing.
other than what you
But
take
then
out for
in the-
dental.
In the new
and
contract, we
yeah.
cut that in half, we reduced it to $7.50.
For new employees, but the grandfathered in employees still get it.
So yeah, new employees, we reduced it. So there will be a handful at that rate.
But they
But
did
yes,
cap
your
it.
shock is shared when I first learned about that.
They did cap it moving forward, so the maximum Viva contribution is $15.50. For new employees, it's $7.50. So.
$17.50?
No, $15.50 for Viva cap.
Oh, we need to let. Okay, good.
Social Security and Medicare, just the 7.65%. Retirement. Oops. I decreased it to the 9.39 for PERS. And
It shows an
also-
increase- It shows an increase though, this is one of my questions. of like
Yeah.
37%, and I know PERS went down.
Yep, so this is the also part. Also, John wanted to build in, with your guys' permission, a 3% deferred comp match. And that is based on the total salaries and wages, and then what we project. If everybody did a 3% match from the employer, then it would increase it. And this is the line item I think it would hit for that. However, it is a board decision on whether or not you guys want that to be allowed.
It actually will be a different account line, and I
Okay.
guess my concern with that is that that's something that needs to be bargained. And so you don't typically budget for something that hasn't been bargained, because if you do that, you're gonna guarantee that their attorney's gonna come and get that. That's my experience with collective bargaining.
Okay.
Is you put it in there, you're making a statement that that's gonna happen, and those type of things are usually bargained.
What we found is that statewide, the majority of 911 centers,
Mhm.
if they haven't had a match on their voluntary contributions previously, they're adding that now as a recruiting and retention tool. And it's, yes, you're right on the bargaining piece. But we were one of a handful in the state that haven't done that to date. And it's an attractive thing because people know and expect that. They expect to have a match on voluntary, even on voluntary contributions to retirement. So we thought that we went through it with our 457 administrator. We feel like 3% is a solid number that will help that without being overly excessive. And I think our total cost on that was about
Around 80,000.
around 80,000 a year if everyone took advantage of the 3% match. Right now, not all employees are contributing. And I'm sure some would.
But your preference is that it's not shown in the
No,
budget.
I understand that, I agree with you. But we go through this through collective bargaining, and sometimes you're horse trading for a lower COLA. It's a bargaining tool, and I don't think it's appropriate to straight on just say, we're gonna, if you budget this, you're you're committing to it. And you can do that, it's just not my experience, because things like this get bargained, and I totally understand the retention tool or, you know, a recruitment tool, but at the end of the day, it's a financial commitment and it's bargain.
When we talked about bargaining last time, yeah, we worked with the HR director. And we laid out how we bargain in the categories that we have. Give your base salary, education incentives, 457 matches. Those categories, and that's how we decided we were going to look at it. It plays an overall role in the total package. And so if somebody chooses to not have deferred comp and they do their comparables at the end, but their base is higher. You gotta look at it comprehensively. So I absolutely agree with what Chris is saying.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I agree with you. So we'll change that. We'll pull that out. I think I saw a
Yeah.
note from Katrina.
Katrina said that Chris is correct. It is a bargaining thing. You shouldn't put it in the budget. However, you can put it into your ending fund balance.
Yeah,
Yes.
And
You put
then-
it into a reserve,
Yeah.
and you do that for anticipated COLAs or whatever gets bargained, but you stick it in that line and you're basically saying it's gonna happen.
Well, it
Yeah.
doesn't
Okay.
go away as opposed to like a one-time retention, which we approved.
Yeah, and by leaving it as a ending fund balance item, I mean, the dollars are still there, you can move around. My other question about it is, so when would we be bargaining something like that? Would that be, are we gonna open the contract at some point?
our current contract is through 24. So mid to late 24, we'll start bargaining for 25 and beyond.
So, yeah,
So we don't really need it in this budget at all, because we're not bargaining again until the 25. budget
Yeah.
year.
I would say let's just leave it in the ending fund balance, that's why I agree with that.
Great point, thank you.
Then unemployment, I did it based on our quarterly fees that we got in 2023 so far, and then increased it. Let's see, industrial accident claims. Same thing. Severance pay. On the one that was printed in the PDF version, it was at 51,000. But when I worked it out on the actual severance pay sheet, it was a little bit less. So that's what this amount is showing on here.
Do we have known retirements or?
We do, Deanna gave her retirement notice for June. I think she sent it to everybody. And other than that, we just have kind of trainee positions of people that just come through the system, don't quite make
Right.
it. So we have those. built.
Typically the retirements from the larger
Yeah,
payouts out. So with that one, does this number accommodate any
Accrual payout,
accrual
that's
payouts?
my question too. I
for-
don't think this does.
Yeah, it seems low.
have what?
Does it, are we including the accrual?
Yep.
Payout?
For like Deanna, that we, as a known retirement then.
Mhm.
That covers it.
Yeah, I can go back and double check, but I did it based on what her banks are now and what they will be.
So you're
that
calling it
point.
severance pay
Yeah,
for vacation buyout.
yeah,
I don't know if we have sick leave buyout.
sick leave buyout of
A
half.
percentage, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that is, so the salary is not included. This is the accrual payout.
You just project and anticipate retirements, right? You don't-
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you just. You're taking all of it.
What their
Whatever
accrual banks
medical
would
have.
be.
So, did the board get a copy of this notice?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I know she's,
I didn't get,
I thought she did. know
I thought she sent one,
gave me
but-
A printed copy and she emailed, I assumed it was to the board. The sheriff called me and said, hey, I got a copy of this. I don't know
Yeah,
if the sheriff forwarded it on to the entire board.
he told me over the phone about it, but
Okay,
I.
so yeah,
I
she did submit a letter to me and to the board. She addressed it to both. Stating June 28th as her retirement date, June 28th, 24. We'll make sure you get a copy.
Okay. Now,
And so there's no other anticipated retirements for next year then.
not that we know of. So the other little bit is just what we think for trainees of paying out
Yeah.
their stuff if they have it. Let's see. Office supplies. I did not increase it. I kept it the same. And then training material is increased only by the change in contract amount for Power DMS, but Pub Ed stayed the same. Employee appreciation, we added $6,000 for wellness. And John can give a little more explanation on that.
Yeah, we've added a software application called Mindbase. And Mindbase is for this year, it was a $6,000 setup and getting it live and active. Future years is currently projected at 5,800. But we added our wellness to this. We also have stood up our own internal peer support group. They are in the process of building that now and getting training along with state peer support groups. So we kind of lumped all of that into this category.
Do you guys have any questions before we move on? So we're in small tools and minor equipment. This we slightly increased for computer hardware. And that was for our IT guy to make sure he has enough funds to purchase what he needs for all of his computer hardware. For facility or for fuel, gas facility, we left it the same. And that's what it was last year, so no change. Legal, we kept Frank the same, we kept Summit Law the same, but for other legal, we decreased it down to 12,000. Postage, we left at 600. I didn't put red there, but it's 600. And do you guys have any questions before I move to telephone? Okay. So under telephone, we did increase it. We took off the purchasing department because we won't have that cost next year. But we did increase Verizon and our WSP access fees were significantly increased. They hadn't done a review for a few years. And when they did, they said, hey, you guys have been paying not enough. So it's now $1,000 per month rather than $400 a month. And then the last line on there is phone and network subscriptions from what More Power had provided us. And that's on our More Power tab. And that's where those changes came from. And then in advertising, left it the same. WCIA insurance and the Fidelity bond. The WCIA is based off of the estimate they gave us. The Fidelity bond is based off of the increase that State Farm gave us. The property insurance tax, or the property insurance for the new facility is included in that premium above, and then that auto insurance is also included in that premium above.
Your premiums for insurance, you have another line somewhere under radio operations. Is that a different kind of insurance?
It's insurance for our radio towers.
Okay.
And then moving down into membership dues and subscriptions, increased APCO, CalCog is the same, SHRM. Pretty much everything was left untouched. Nina increased a little bit. And then we have Costco, which wasn't budgeted before, but we do have a business Costco membership. And then we have a Survey Monkey membership that we didn't have prior. And then we budgeted 6,000 for training. And I will let John explain what that 6,000 training line is for.
Yeah, we will have a focus going forward of getting more dispatchers to some of these trainings. Some of the regional conferences and things like that, those require memberships in those organizations to do that.
You guys have any questions before I move forward? Okay, so computers and software, we left it at the 5,000. Miscellaneous other, kept it the same. Board and employee appreciation meals, we did increase. Part of it's that we got that new grill, and so John likes to make meals for the dispatchers so they don't have to go out all the time to get their food. So we increased it slightly. It also covers Thanksgiving and Christmas meals for dispatchers who have to work the holidays. And then photocopies was increased because we have 2 copy machines now. And our copies were more than we had expected them to be for the cost. So it was increased. That's my best explanation. We have more copies. We are not moving to paperless.
Are you paying, did you purchase your MFPs,
Our
Your-
printers,
copiers?
no, we're renting them. We're like on a 5-year rental.
Is that why you're coded under principal?
Yes.
Okay.
So one's under principal and then the taxes for that is on a different one.
All right.
And then let's see, I'm skipping stuff. Repairs and maintenance. The PUD is coming in quite a bit less than what we had estimated it, so I cut it in half. We will see if that's enough moving forward, but the bills as they're coming in currently seem like we need to decrease that category. And then we did add a line for truck maintenance of $2,000. And that's just for the work truck that we have.
Just a question. on
Sure.
PD, is this from PD, from LFP? Does the city have the water meter and then we pay?
No, so back when we got that estimate amount, we had asked PUD and they said, probably the one that's closest to your size and how much water you're going to consume would be LFD. So they pulled LFD's information and gave that to me so I could get
Okay,
an
that's-
estimate.
But that's for power, right?
Uh-huh.
Our city water bills is significantly higher than anticipated. But it's accounted for here.
Okay, and then our IGN and ISP is much higher than what we had previously thought it would be. But these are the categories and how much monthly that they are costing us currently. And I will let John speak to that because I don't know all the technicalities for IGN and ISP.
What's driving that 200%? Which one of those?
Comcast primarily, and we are working with Astound right now because we do have dark fiber between the Hall of Justice and here that we can use. And the Comcast hasn't given us the quality of service, the QoS that we require. So Astound right now is looking to be about between 1,000 and 1,300 less per month than what we're paying Comcast. So we are going to have a legal look at our Comcast contract. And since that QoS piece isn't there, we're trying to get out of the Comcast contract and move everything over to Astound. Primarily because they haven't provided what they said they could. And 2, it's significantly less expensive with Astound. So we are working to reduce that number, but as of right now, that number is accurate. And it is more because we have the built-in redundancies. So we have both providers here. And we still have a little more build out to do once this railroad track thing is settled. Then we're going to have a provider come from the north side of the building over the tracks to provide one power from PUD as well as internet for ISP. Right now, even though we have redundancies with different vendors as we should, all of those vendors are on one pole at the highway. So when a truck turning into the Lowe's takes out that pole, they take out all of our providers. So we're trying to get a different provider, or it'll most likely be a Astound coming over. But anyway, the bottom line is, yes, our cost is significantly higher than it was at the hall. But we are working to reduce that. Hopefully we can see it 1,000 to 1,300 less a month, and that will have an impact.
So if you have dark fiber, you're leasing it right now from Comcast versus like a managed?
Correct. We get EPL lines from Astound and from Comcast.
And your backup provider is?
We have both. We have Astound and Comcast, and we can run on either.
Like if you go away from Comcast, you know.
Then we'll ramp up the Lumen. We have Lumen on there as well. They're whereas Comcast and Astound are fiber, Lumen is copper. So we don't get quite the bandwidth that we want, but it is a legitimate backup for us should we lose anything else.
So I'm just double checking. Can everybody hear on the Zoom what they were talking about?
We can hear.
Okay. All right. So the next line item is copier rent tax. It was at 144. I increased it to 300. We just have 2 copiers now. And our second copier was actually a little bit more expensive than our original contract because it was from 2 years prior. And so the amounts had increased just slightly. On this copy, the Washington State Auditor is right here, the one that's on the screen. In the printed copy, it ended up in salaries and wages for whatever reason, but it should have been down in here. For meals, let's see, I left that the same. Mileage was good. We did need to increase parking. We had it at 240, but with everybody traveling, all the extra people, the parking actually was more than what we had budgeted. So we need to budget more for 2024. Tuition and registration, we left it the same. Airfare, we did increase. There's a lot more people going to trainings right now, and they're flying. So we increased that. We increased the car rental for the same reason as all the other categories. And then same thing for lodging. We're just sending more people than historically we've been able to do. So that's where those numbers are. And then professional and contracted services. Whoa. Some items went up and some went down. That number's not right. This is missing something. Sorry, I gotta double check that professional contract services. It should be more. Because most items increased the cost. Our health applications increased cost. We have to pay more for public safety testing because we canceled our contract, and then a couple years later we decided to come back. So that's the increased change. Waste connections, we now have 2 shred bins, so that's also increased. And our CAD administrator had an increase. Managed IT services is the same. We left miscellaneous, we left CCS console cleaning, and then next request was actually a little bit lower. So I got to double check those numbers up there, the overall number, but those are good numbers for each individual item. And then in intergovernmental professional services, it increased. We, for 2024, sent the notice to District 2 that at the end of 23, we will be processing in-house for 2024. So we have that cost is gone.
What did they process for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we added this Geocom mapping service, and it's a startup fee. I'm gonna let John explain that in just a second. And then the other fees remain stable, so they're the same. And that GIS mapping at the bottom is part of our CPD contract, so I just put it at the maximum CPD reimbursement amount. But for 2023, it came in almost exactly at that. So I'll let John go ahead and explain the Geocom mapping services.
Geocom is they're also the vendor that the state has used for the ESNet and the mapping and the routing of the 911 calls, et cetera. Geocom is a service that would help manage all of our regular routine mapping updates for the Spillman CAD system. This 112,000 is their estimate right now. They're digging through our data to see exactly what the price would be, but I asked them for an estimate for our budget. So this is a high amount. It should be a little bit less than this. And the reason for that is the mapping, without getting too much detail, mapping using the Esri software is it's a specialized skill. Right now, we rely on the county for those services, the county IT department, Jim Williams, who does a fantastic job with mapping and things, but mapping in the regular world, for lack of a better term, and mapping in 911 are very different and unique. So Geocom is one of the preferred providers that does that for 911. And as I said, they do it for the state system. The 112 is a one-time. The annual after that is more like 15 to 20,000. So it's and the startup is that much because they have to spend hours formatting it properly and get it in the right format to be usable for us. And that also is the service that we would use to, we're required to upload our files to the state on a regular basis, and this will help us do that as well. And we would, part of the cost savings on this, we would be going away from using the county for GIS services. So we wouldn't be paying that amount. I don't recall, because it was kind of built into some of our other things with the county, wasn't it, Rachel? What we're paying county IT and for mapping services.
It was just built into our lease, so there's no specific amount that was paid for IT.
But we've had a separate invoice for some of Jim's time.
Jim himself, GIS itself came in at around 13,000 for 2023 when we got the invoice for that.
So
For
yeah,
the software or for him?
for him.
For his work,
We
yeah.
already own the software. We already own all of the Esri licensing and the servers that it rides on and everything else. That cost is already ours.
Of that particular service, that's not an intergovernmental. So I'm gonna move it into professional services, just so you guys are aware. I'm moving that out and into professional services. Okay, does anybody online have any questions for me or for John before we move on? Okay.
The county treasurer charges you for banking?
Yes. They do.
That's special. They do that too.
Okay, so technology and software maintenance. There is a substantial increase. Part of it, actually a good chunk of it, was that prior we had this more power line was showing up in our equipment reserve fund. But when I was reviewing it, I was like, these are not reserve line items, they're operating items. So they need to be in our operating fund. So we are going to be contributing less to our reserves and actually paying our operating out of our operating fund for those items. So that's where the huge change is. There are other changes, of course. We've added in Pulse Point. We have some small items, Crystal Reports, Apple Storage, Red Hat, Keeper Security. Those are all, we're paying them now. They were not in the 2023 budget. So we wanted to keep them in for 2024. I took out Office 365 and the cloud server and the business email that was previously budgeted because those are part of that more power line item.
I have a question. So up, and I don't know why I didn't notice this before, up above on line 259,
Mhm.
we have managed IT services for more power, and to see their tab, and it's 179,000. And here we have this more power tab on line 308 for 241.
But we're paying them both of those?
Yes. Yes.
Let's look at that. I don't, because their total that we're paying them annually is less than, it's more about that 179. We should
So
have two
the-
different numbers for them.
No, so managed IT is actually managed IT. The equipment operation costs are all of these subscriptions that we have to pay regardless. So this is the breakdown of all the subscriptions that are actually, you know, licenses, subscriptions, all of those things. That's what that tab is under. Hold up. Wait a minute. I don't think this
Yeah,
includes.
'cause I'm certain we're not paying them 400,000 a year. 200,000,
Do you have a contract with them for an MSP?
we do.
Okay,
And that's that 179,000 special.
yeah, we have a co-managed environment as an entire city, and we don't get a fraction of that.
I will review that with
We'll
John
look- we'll
and
look into that. I
Dawn.
think we've got numbers duplicated there.
okay, we can double check that. That was, just so you know, from the equipment breakout that Dawn and you and I went over.
Mhm.
That's where those numbers are coming from. So if they're double counted expenditures, that's kind of why I was having that. Is I wanted to make sure that this wasn't capturing two things. So hopefully we can figure out what those subscriptions are and where they should be coming from.
He says, we'll revisit that and have an answer for that for the board meeting for the approval.
Is the Pulse Point up and running now?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, Pulse Point has been, we did a couple of months of beta and a soft go live, and it's been actually live now for 3 months.
Okay.
Okay, then under, am I skipping? Anybody have more questions?
What's Red Hat?
What is Red Hat?
It's a Linux operating system for servers. This phone server primarily. On many servers, we have a Windows server operating system. For the Spillman system, it's a Linux Red Hat operating system.
It's not a charitable organization.
No, it's not.
Okay, then under landlord tenants, it's reduced. And it only includes our lease agreement that we have with the city of Longview for the lost rent and our $1 annual lease fee for the space. And then we're almost to the end of ops. Copier rent principal, that's just for our 2 copiers that we have now. And then we have capital outlays at 46,000. That is unchanged from 2023. Do you know what that covers under that line item, John,
Which one, I'm sorry?
for capital outlays? It's at 46,000. Line 321.
I don't recall off the top of my head. I'll have to look behind the scenes of the other sheet. You have that coming from another sheet there.
I don't think so. I'll double check what that was from, because it's something from 2023. I want to say, and I could be wrong. We were probably trying to budget for equipment for the finance manager, not the finance manager, the facility manager, equipment under that line item. So I will double check that number and what it was originally budgeted in there for.
Yeah, I'll have to look at outside it. I know we,
So sorry, I will have an answer for you before next meeting. Transfer outs are just to cover, transfer out to radio ops is to cover our radio expenditures and to bulk up our ending fund balance in that fund. We like to keep it at roughly 200,000. And this year it's falling below that, so we're trying to get it back up to what it should be. And then in radio replacement, we don't have any equipment funding coming in because everything's now based on our replacement schedule. And so that's that 340. And then this is kind of what the ending fund balance is looking like based on what we have currently. However, got to make some adjustments, so it may go up or down depending on the adjustments that are made. And that is our ops budget. Do you guys have any more questions on our ops budget before I move forward? Okay.
The
So
ending fund balance is still very, very healthy.
it is,
Just
yeah.
To note that.
Okay, so equipment replacement. The beginning fund balance is just what projected to end the year with. Our interest earnings are, just what they are. I did 2,500. I don't know if it's gonna be more or less, but that's where I put it in at. Transfer in from sales tax is at 345. And that is based on the more power tab for what actually is a replacement for our equipment and the replacement schedule that they had put together. And so based off of that and when we need to replace stuff, then it's spread out over however many years, and at 345 we'll still be healthy to be able to do all of those replacements and not have to come after the users for higher user fees to do those replacements. And then the expenditures. I'm keeping on track. Wikipedia. West Tech was paid out of 2023, so it's not in 2024. Spillman, that was just the retainage that was left over from the year prior, and we paid that out this year, so there's nothing budgeted for 2024. And then in capital outlays is that equipment replacement schedule
Is
plus.
that a reserve or that's like a 352% increase. You actually have a plan on what those capital expenditures are going to be for next year?
Yeah, there, so, under our, oops, I'm not trying to do that. This has so many tabs. No. Okay, so, so More Power has a built out equipment replacement thing similar to the operations portion. So I used whatever number as I broke that out per site, what that would be, plus anything that we have built in on our other equipment. So CAD, phone, consoles, we don't have anything scheduled. So the only thing scheduled is that 67,000 for the equipment document that More Power had put together. That's an equipment reserve. And then the explanation for what that covers is on that equipment replacement tab. And there are things that I can't tell you what they are, but John might be able to tell you what they are.
Most of our equipment is on either a 3 or a 5-year life cycle, and we're just plugging all of that in. So the life cycle and planning for it in advance.
Okay, so it's not an expenditure next year. That was my question. Is this building a reserve to make the replacement based on the life cycle, or are you actually spending
No,
that?
these are actually calculated to be spent in 2024, but the transfer in amount is to help cover all of the expenses that we have built out on our replacement schedule.
There will be, yes, that amount will be expended in 24 for replacements. What's that?
I just thought everything was brand new here. I guess
Most of the stuff here is brand new, but yeah, we have a lot of equipment
Okay.
out and about that's not. Radio tower.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is the equipment side, the radio side is a different beast of its own.
And then there's a built-in 25,000 other category. I'm not sure what capital equipment may or may not fall under that category. That might be more John specific, but we built in kind of a miscellaneous for capital expenses for equipment.
That amount is the unforeseen things with, as many of you know, with technology and things, things happen. Things die, blow up.
So that. Questions before we move to radio operations? Okay, radio operations are all the operations done at our different radio sites, funded by our ops and funded by lease fees that we have at our different tower sites. So all of them were increased by their contractual amounts for the leases, or guesstimated amounts because I don't have their CPIs yet. And so I increased them by probably 3% or so to get something close to what I think they will be. And then the leasehold tax is just the tax that we have to pay. KPTV pays us and then we pay it to Department of Revenue. There are only private people on our towers, so we have to charge that. Interest, just a guesstimate of what we think the interest will be. And then the transfer in was that 370,000 that you saw before in operations. I'm going to review this in just a second. And the transfer is hefty this year because I was trying to get us back up to close to the 200,000 as an ending fund balance in that account. Expenditures. So I was doing propane at 2,000. I increased it to 4,000. We've had to have propane done at our sites more in 2023 than we have before. So I was trying to increase it to cushion in case we need that same thing for 2024. That insurance line is for our equipment and things that we have on our radio sites. So that's the insurance cost for WCIA that they're charging us as a property insurance for the radio sites and equipment. PUD actually decreased a little bit. So I did that based on what they're coming in right now. And that's all in these hidden tabs. And so it decreased just slightly. Repairs and maintenance increased. Our radio system maintenance with Day Wireless is higher. And last year, it was slightly lower, but we did add Deer Island to that contract. And so depending on when they start adding that to the monthly fee, this could go up. And then I didn't change anything with the PM generators. Left generator repairs the same. HVAC was increased. I think that I feel like we added HVAC here. I think that's why our thing increased, as we added HVAC services for our actual building, and so that's why it's higher. Although that should probably be in our operating fund. I'll double check that.
Do you actually have any generator repairs this year?
Yes, yeah. Okay. And then we left miscellaneous radio repairs at 5,000, like we have been. Property taxes, just based on what we've historically paid in property taxes for our radio sites.
You actually have to pay property tax for those?
We do, I think it's for Rainier, maybe,
Oh.
is the one we pay for. And then those are just our lease agreements that we have with our different radio sites. Some are considered short-term and some are considered long-term, depending on how the auditor classified them. And so I moved them into their respective categories. They are highlighted because I won't know the actual increased amounts until later in the year. And so I didn't have those for you, but they're based on what I think they might come in at. And then that leasehold tax is the same. We we pay it and then they reimburse us. And so it's in our expenditures, but then also in our revenues. And then our long-term lease agreements is these ones. Our Davis Peak was budgeted a little bit too high last year, so we decreased it. So that line decreased just slightly because there was an increase and a decrease in these two, Signal Peak and Davis Peak, and so that's what that changes. It's not much, it's like $3,000 change, but and then the ending fund balance with all of those would put us at 198, which is kind of where we like to keep it. So that is radio reserve. Do you guys have any questions on that one? Radio replacement. So we're starting out with a 1.6 balance, and then interest guesstimated at 27,000. That's just based on what we've kind of been getting, and then transfer in at the 340,000. And then for our actual expenditures, we are projecting to get our federal grant this year, and it only covers equipment. And so this 555,000 is to cover the labor for that equipment. And then in capital improvements, that is to cover the the possible purchase of a site and to build out a site for woodland, because we're having a hard time finding a place to actually do our woodland work that we need to get done. So that's what that is built in for.
Yeah, regarding Woodland, we've kind of struck out trying to find an existing tower that we can join in on. And we've been working extensively with the city of Woodland. So we're thinking that our best option might be to just purchase some land and build a new site. Coverage that we need, so.
Do we actually own any sites right now, or are they always?
No, we own a handful of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of our, 13 or 14 sites that we're on, we own, I believe, 6.
Okay, and then in sales tax. Oh, it looks like it does have a decrease. Like I said, I built in a decrease because I'm not sure exactly how sales tax is gonna go. If you don't agree with that, I can boost that up and leave it as an increased amount. I think I decreased by like 4.5% or so from what we had it at. And then,
Well, I have a question about that.
sure,
So 4% less than 2023, right, which is a little over 3 million. Are you exceeding your projection of 3 million?
oh, we are,
Then I probably would project a 4% based on your actual, not what was budgeted. I think that's a little too low.
okay, 4% based on actuals, got it.
Based on the 2023 actual.
I did touch interest. And then all that's in sales tax is the transfer outs that you see in our other funds that you've already seen or are coming up. And then this has an ending fund balance at 2.8. Do you guys have any questions before I move down further? Looks like I did 10%. Yes.
I see 2.6.
Yeah,
Or where? Sorry, did I read the wrong line? Yeah, sorry, it is 2.69.
okay. Maybe I have the wrong version or
I
something.
think what you sent us was 2.8.
It was
This
2.8 on here.
this one says 2. So, like I've asked this question before, remind me what the stabilization reserve is for.
So when we got our bond, they wanted us to borrow above and beyond what we needed to keep an amount set aside that would just sit there to make sure that we could make our payment. So we had set up a stabilization reserve fund that was 1 year of debt service and 10% of our operating funds for ops and radio ops. That's set aside in that fund. So we didn't have to borrow more money than we needed on that.
Because you have a bond reserve, but I think that's
Just for
your
our,
interest in your principal.
Yeah.
Right, but, so how long do you have to keep doing it?
until our bonds are paid off,
So you like,
was 30 years.
you're not escalating that, you're just keeping it at that amount.
I keep it at that amount, yeah.
For 30 years, that amount will seem minuscule.
Right.
It won't be a windfall.
Yeah, so that's what the stabilization reserve fund is. There's nothing really happening in there. It just sits there. Facility reserve is the fund we set up for replacing this facility. So we agreed to 200,000 a year to be put away in there for replacing this facility. So that's what that is. And there are no expenses out of it. It just is building. Our bond reserve is just our principal and interest payments for our bond. And that's the only expenditures coming out of there. The interest earnings just based on a guesstimate of how much we think that will be. And then it's our sales tax being transferred in to cover the principal and interest payments. And our project fund.
Rachel, mine ended on page 14 with the reserves. I don't have the next ones that you're talking about.
Get on here.
Oh, it is on the,
Okay, it's on the PDF
yeah, it
version.
is on the PDF.
Sorry, I cut it off too early. So,
Budget, okay.
yep, so the project fund is just based on where I guesstimate we'll be at paying everybody for this facility and what's going on with the building, with AdCom and all of the different players. And what I think we will roll into 2024 with. And that's kind of where I got that from. And then we expended out professional contractor service, capital outlays, and project costs, miscellaneous project costs. However, right now, we're looking at roughly 450,000 is unallocated to anything. So we may not actually expend that, and it could be used to put back into sales tax, or I guess that would be a discussion.
2860 that you're talking about?
So just the
446.
project fund in general. So the full project itself, right now, we have roughly 450,000 unallocated dollars. So they're not attached to any contract or anything.
Okay.
And so whatever's remaining after we've paid all of our contracts off and done all the stuff that was scheduled, then we could move that into sales tax, or it would be a discussion of what you guys want to do with any unallocated funds at that point.
Yeah, because so you showed like just shy of 447 for capital outlays. I had a question mark. I think you just answered it. And then miscellaneous, we put 200,000 for capital outlays.
Yeah, so capital outlays, that line itself, it should actually be our capital outlays. The only thing I paid out of capital outlays is Patriot. And then everything else was being paid out of miscellaneous or professional and contracted services. So it's probably a misrepresentation of where the money lies. However, they're all still part of the project, so I can move those dollars accordingly. But I don't think that we are going to expend the full 758,000 that we have in there. So that expended money could be moved.
Okay.
Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Well, that answers my question.
Okay.
As to what is this allocated for? I think if you don't have a purpose for it, it's probably going to
Miscellaneous or,
When do you anticipate that all the Patriot stuff will be done?
We made their final contract payment just last week. It's in the current payables. We still have the retainage that the state requires, right, that we're still holding on to, and once the state, that's a matter of when they file paperwork, and they're trying to get their subs to file paperwork, and it's, at some point that'll all happen, and the state will contact us and say, pay the retainage, and then we'll do that.
But that'll most likely be next year. At some point.
that might be,
It might run into next
Yeah.
year, yeah. I would hope not, but yeah, more than likely with the difficulty Patriot is having. They have subs right now, quite frankly, that are saying, I'm not going to file my paperwork until you pay me. The Patriot is saying, we can't pay you until you file your paperwork.
Yeah.
So it's between them, we're kind of out of that picture, but yeah, they're battling through that now.
okay. And then the very last thing is a new Fed grant for our radio equipment. And that was the one that we've been talking about. Deanna has brought to the board multiple times, just giving you guys updates. Last we heard, October of this year is when we're supposed to get funding. And so the way that 2024 was built was guesstimating that we would use around 500,000 of that money this year before year end. And then roll into 2024 with about 1.5. I'm not sure. We may end up not expending any of it this year and start 2024 with the full amount. But that's kind of where those numbers came from and why they're that way.
We
And
do-
then,
Sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt. We do have excuse me, a handful of purchases we are making now based on that. So depending on when we get the money, again, it's anticipated for October. And we'll use that money to reimburse the expenditures we're making now for some radio equipment that was required.
Where are you posting to the 500,000 to now?
I don't have it built into 2023 because it wasn't budgeted, but it's gonna hit our radio reserve.
And we're guaranteed the money. I mean, we're pretty confident.
That's
we're
what
gonna-
they
Yes,
said.
yeah.
Is you got an award letter?
We don't have an award letter. We have the email saying that it was approved and when we should see the money, et cetera.
We got,
We have expenditures before we receive the money. I thought they would call that, yeah, the plan payment. I think we already paid for this, then we haven't received the grant.
We can use it for 2023 expenditures. It's part of the grant, even though, because the money's just been delayed getting to us, but it does cover 23. I think it's, the grant period is 23 through 25 or 26 maybe, but
I can't recall. I think it's
but
a
yes, they'll
5-year.
reimburse anything after January 1 of 2023.
They haven't done it with other grants. So I'm just curious.
I mean, worst case scenario, if they don't allow us to do that, we do have the reserves sitting there that we can cover the expenditure. So our reserve cycle, our replacement cycle in radio, what this grant is doing is basically saying we're replacing everything now instead of later. And then we'll put new cycles to all of our equipment from there. So we do have money sitting there that we had planned to do replacements of certain things in our radio system, like microwaves and stuff, that won't be used for that. So I think we're okay on that front. And then, of course, just the expenditures just matched what our revenue coming in is, but I don't think we're gonna actually expend the full amount next year. And that is it.
Well, we anticipate this to be on the agenda for our next regular meeting.
Yes, on
Did you-
September 20th, we'll answer the questions that we've noted. We'll provide those answers for you. And then, yes, we will be asking for approval the September 20th meeting
Okay,
for the 2024 budget.
okay. Any other questions or input on the proposed budget?
When, do you know when you might, since that's a week from today, and I'm not gonna be here, when do you think you'll send that updated? Based on our discussion today.
Chris, I would love to send that as soon as possible. I'm in an all-day training tomorrow. And I'll be back in the office on Friday. So
Probably Friday that when it goes out then.
yeah, and there's quite a few adjustments and double checks that I want to do on it. I'm sorry that this is the
Do we
first
have
time
more than
you're
another
seeing it.
week? Well, can you? Does it have to be next week?
That was not my deadline, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think
Do
we
you guys
have
have a
a,
preference?
We have historically approved the budget either in October or November.
Yeah.
But our bylaws anticipate that it's done in September with a first look in August, and we're doing that, so we're trying to get it done in September. Is there anything wrong with doing it at the October meeting? No, we can certainly do that if there are questions remain.
Because statutorily, you only have to have it adopted by December 31.
Yes, true.
I would propose we wait till October. I think
I think that-
this is a lot of different funds that we've had the discussion for 2 hours. And personally, I won't be here next week, so I was still like, time to review and be there when we adopt it.
I think the original intent was to make sure that agencies had the final numbers for their budget cycle, so.
That's fine.
Even with the changes that we have, the user fee numbers would not increase by any stretch. There may be a potential they would slightly decrease based on that 10% reduction that we planned based on the user fee formula. So, yeah, to answer your question, no, there's nothing wrong with doing it at the October meeting. If the board would like to do that, we certainly can.
I would say personally, that would be my preference. One, there's quite a few changes and reviews that need to happen, but two, I will not be at the next meeting. So if you had questions, I will not be able to answer them. I won't be here.
So it sounds like it's gonna be much more practical to have it at the October regular meeting then.
That would be my
Perhaps-
preference.
Perhaps any updates that you may be able to have. So that the information is there for the next meeting with the understanding that there may be some final adjustment before we adopt in October. Does that sound reasonable? I don't know that we need a.
I don't think we need a motion or
Motion for
anything.
that.
We currently have it on the agenda for September. We will just take it off and put it on the October agenda.
Just leave it as like maybe a budget update perhaps, and we can.
We could, I would prefer that we email the things we need to answer today based on this conversation. We'll email that and we'll email any updates that we have. As Rachel mentioned, she won't be here at the next
Sure.
board meeting. But yeah, we'll certainly get the information to you and then we'll plan on the approval for October.
And probably end of September, early October, I can get you a pretty clean draft of what I would present at the October meeting, so you guys can ask anything you want. And you guys can send them to me, but don't do a reply all, because then it's a public meeting and all that. But that way, people are all on board of what's going on. And I can send you the actual breakout sheets and stuff, so you can review them. Does that sound good?
This is Sammy with District 5. I don't have any problem waiting. I think it's a great idea. Is there a way to send with all that information you're going to send out, John, to the separate agencies, just the user fee schedule again, so everybody can plug that in their agency budget?
Yes, we will. We'll send that out to all agencies.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about this or workshop?
Not related to the budget workshop, but just informationally. Another item we will have on the budget or not budget agenda for next week will be, we're working on an emergency resolution for one of our tower sites. We discovered that the building that houses all of our radio equipment at one site is literally falling apart. And we need to get the repairs done quickly before any more weather happens to us. So we will be asking at the next meeting for an emergency resolution so that we can avoid the drawing it out and getting the repairs done quickly. So you'll see that next week at the board meeting, just for information. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, well, with that, I guess we are adjourned. And thank you for all the hard work and input
Yes.
from everybody. So.
Thank you to Rachel. She has done a lot of work on this budget.